Daniel was driving his patrol car slowly down the highway when he noticed a small blue sedan ahead of him. It wasn't speeding, it wasn't swerving, and it wasn't doing anything wrong. But Daniel had been in a bad mood since morning. He had argued with his supervisor, he had received 2 complaints last week, and he felt like the whole world was against him. So when he saw the car, he decided to pull it over for something small, something he knew he could explain later. In his mind, he just wanted to show he still had control over something. He switched on his lights, and the blue sedan pulled over to the side quietly. Inside the car was Maya, a calm black woman in her early 30s, driving home after a long shift at her job. She had no idea why she was being stopped. She checked her mirrors, took a deep breath, and placed her hands on the steering wheel the way she had been taught for safety. She hoped the stop would be simple and peaceful, but she could already feel something strange in the air. Daniel walked toward her car with heavy steps. His jaw was tight, and his eyes looked angry even though nothing had happened yet. He tapped on her window and did not return her polite greeting. Instead, he asked for her license and registration in a cold voice. Maya handed everything over without question. She knew better than to argue on the side of a busy road. She quietly asked, "Is everything okay, officer?" But Daniel didn't answer her question. He simply said, "Step out of the vehicle." Maya felt her stomach drop. She had done nothing wrong, but she knew she had no choice. Cars were rushing past them at high speed. The wind from each car hit her face as she stepped out. She stood beside her car, trying to remain calm, but the officer's attitude made her uneasy. Daniel walked around her slowly, looking at her car as if searching for a reason to accuse her of something. Then he stopped in front of her and said words she could not believe, "Kneel." Maya blinked, thinking she had heard him wrong. "Sorry," she asked softly. Daniel repeated it louder, "Kneel on the ground." She looked at the gravel road, then at the cars passing by, then at the officer. Kneeling there would humiliate her. Anyone driving by could see her. She wanted to refuse, but she knew what refusing could cost her. Her voice was steady but sad as she said, "Officer, I haven't done anything." Daniel stepped closer, his hand resting on his holster. Maya felt her heart beat faster. She could feel the injustice pushing down on her chest like a heavy weight. Still, she lowered herself slowly to her knees. The sharp gravel dug into her skin, the cold road stung her legs, and the sound of passing cars made her flinch. She kept her hands visible, breathing slowly, trying to stay strong even in this humiliating moment. Daniel stood over her, looking down with cold eyes. But inside, something strange happened. Even he wasn't sure why he pushed things this far. Maybe it was pride. Maybe frustration. Maybe he just wanted to feel powerful after a week of feeling like a failure. But whatever the reason was, he didn't realize there were people watching. A few cars slowed as drivers tried to understand why a woman was kneeling on the road. Someone rolled down their window. Someone else held up a phone. Maya noticed the phones. She could hear the faint clicks, the whispers, the murmurs of people asking each other what was going on. She didn't shout, didn't argue, didn't cry. Instead, she said calmly, "Officer, you're making a mistake." Her voice was steady, but her words carried weight. Daniel felt a moment of discomfort, like her words had reached a part of him he was trying to block. But he ignored it. He told her to keep her head down, but she didn't. She lifted her chin and looked straight ahead. Not at him, not at the cars, but somewhere far away, as if she wanted to hold on to her dignity even when she was forced to kneel. Her quiet strength made the scene feel even heavier. Daniel noticed her confidence. It bothered him. He didn't like seeing calmness in someone he was trying to intimidate. A black SUV slowed to a stop on the opposite side of the road. The driver stared directly at Maya, recognition flashing in his eyes. He quickly grabbed his phone and began recording the entire situation. Maya saw him, and for the first time, her heart felt a small bit of relief. Someone knew her. Someone understood there was more to this scene than an officer doing his job. Daniel noticed the SUV too, and a faint worry started creeping into his mind. Something felt wrong. Something felt dangerous, not physically, but professionally. Still, he kept pretending he was in control. He didn't realize that the moment had already slipped out of his hands. The world around him was watching, recording, remembering. As traffic rushed by and Maya stayed on her knees, Daniel had no idea that this small moment, born out of anger and pride, would soon spread far beyond the road. He didn't know that the woman he forced to kneel was not just a random driver. He didn't know she had a past, a name, and connections that could shake everything he tried to protect. And he had no idea that by the end of this day, the moment he created with his bad decision would begin to ruin his entire career. Maya stayed on her knees, the cold road pressing into her skin, but she refused to let fear take her voice. She had always been calm in difficult moments, and she knew now was the time to stay strong. Daniel, however, felt something he hadn't expected, uneasiness. He could feel the tension in the air, like a storm waiting to break. He looked at the people recording, and a tiny knot formed in his chest. He tried to push the feeling away, but it sat there like a heavy stone. A car slowed beside them, and a woman inside whispered to her husband, "Why is she kneeling? What is he doing?" Their voices were low, but Maya heard the concern. Another man stopped his motorcycle and kept staring. Even without speaking, his eyes asked the same question. The world around them was no longer blind. People were watching, and they were not comfortable with what they saw. But Maya was not thinking about the cameras or the strangers. She was thinking about her own heartbeat, steady and strong despite the fear. She knew she couldn't control the officer, but she could control how she reacted. She lifted her chin again, refusing to bow her head even while kneeling. She told herself to breathe, to stay centered, to trust that the truth always comes out. Daniel walked in circles, pretending to check her car, pretending he had a reason for this stop. But the truth was simple, he had none. His anger had brought him here, not her actions. As he walked back toward her, he noticed that Maya's expression was not one of fear. Instead, she looked like someone who knew a secret, someone who wasn't as helpless as she seemed. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. "You think you're smart?" Daniel asked, his voice shaking slightly. "You think you can stare me down?" Maya did not answer. She simply met his eyes with the same calm strength she had shown since the beginning. Her silence felt louder than words. It made Daniel feel small, and that frustrated him even more. A wind blew across the road, pushing dust toward them. Maya's hair shifted gently, but she didn't move otherwise. She looked like a statue, still, strong, unbroken. Daniel felt the weight of the moment pressing down on his shoulders. For a second, he wondered what he was doing. But pride has a sharp grip, and he wasn't ready to let go. Just then, the black SUV door opened, and the man inside stepped out. He walked with purpose, his eyes locked on Maya, not the officer. Daniel noticed the confidence in the man's steps and felt a flicker of fear. Who was this guy? Why did he look like he already knew everything that was happening? The man held his phone high, recording clearly, and said loudly, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Maya looked up at him. She didn't smile, but she nodded slightly. Daniel snapped, "Step back, sir. This is police business." But the man didn't move. Instead, he said, "I know exactly who she is. And I know exactly what you're doing." His voice was sharp, clear, and honest. His tone didn't sound like a threat, but it felt like one. Maya watched Daniel's face change. His shoulders stiffened, his eyes widened a little, and his mouth opened slightly as if he wanted to explain something but didn't know where to start. He tried to act tough, but the crack in his confidence was obvious. The man continued recording, walking slowly around the scene like someone who already understood every angle. "Officer, you're making a mistake you can't fix," he said calmly. Daniel felt sweat forming on the back of his neck. His instincts told him to stop everything, but his pride pushed him forward. Maya spoke finally, her voice gentle but strong enough to cut through the noise of traffic. "I warned you," she said. "You didn't listen." Daniel looked down at her, and for the first time, he felt a chill run through him. It wasn't fear of danger, it was fear of consequences. A group of people gathered near the shoulder of the road. Some pointed cameras. Some whispered. Some stared in disbelief. The scene was no longer a quiet stop, it was becoming an event, and every second made Daniel look worse. He stepped back from Maya, unsure of what to do next. Everything inside him felt twisted, confused, and angry. Not angry at her, but angry at himself for losing control. He reached into his radio, pretending to call for backup. But he knew no backup could fix what had already begun. Maya slowly stood up, her knees aching from the gravel. But she stood tall, taller than Daniel expected. Her eyes didn't show anger or fear, they showed certainty. She brushed the dust off her clothes calmly and said only one sentence, "You will understand soon." Daniel felt his throat tighten. Something was coming. Something he couldn't hide from. And for the first time that day, he realized Maya was not the one who should be afraid. Daniel kept glancing at the man from the black SUV, trying to understand why his presence made the situation feel heavier. The man wasn't yelling, wasn't threatening, but his confidence alone felt dangerous. He kept his phone aimed directly at Daniel, recording every blink, every word, every breath. Maya stayed standing beside her car, calm like someone who already knew how this would end. The tension on the road grew as more drivers slowed their cars. People whispered, pointed, exchanged confused looks. A mother covered her child's eyes. A truck driver leaned out of his window and shouted, "Leave the woman alone, man." Daniel tried to ignore the noise, but it was becoming impossible. Every sound felt louder than the last. Every pair of eyes felt like judgment. The man from the SUV finally spoke again. "Officer, do you know who you just forced to kneel?" His tone was steady, controlled, but powerful enough to cut straight through the noise. Daniel felt a sting of worry in his chest. He didn't respond. He didn't know what to say. Maya only stared ahead, her expression quiet and unshaken. Suddenly, another car pulled over, a silver sedan. A tall woman rushed out, holding a professional camera. She aimed it directly at Daniel, snapping photos quickly. Daniel raised his hand in frustration. "Ma'am, step back," he shouted. But she kept filming, ignoring him completely. The man from the SUV nodded at her, like they knew each other. Daniel's mind raced. Who are these people? Why are they acting like they're protecting her? He turned to Maya, searching her face for answers. Maya slowly met his eyes, and in her calm voice, she said, "You're not listening now. But you will." Something about the way she said it shook him. He felt like he was standing on thin ice, and every second made another crack appear. The tall woman with the camera suddenly said loudly, "I know her father. He is not going to stay silent about this." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Father? Who was her father? He stepped back slightly, his confidence fading. The man from the SUV added, "Her family has taken down officers before. Good officers were never afraid. But men like you? You're the reason they fight." Daniel felt a sharp burn of fear. He wanted to defend himself, but his mouth refused to move. Maya looked down the road, watching the crowd grow. People recorded from multiple angles. Cars lined the shoulder. The entire scene felt like a small courtroom, and Daniel stood in the center with no defense. A young teenager stepped closer, shaking but determined. He held his phone high. "I got the whole thing," he said. "From when you made her kneel." Daniel felt something break inside him. His biggest fear, being recorded doing something he couldn't explain, was already happening. He tried to act strong, saying, everyone needs to step back. This is police business. But the words sounded weak, even to him. Nobody moved. Instead, more people stepped forward. Maya watched him, studying his face like she could read every thought. "You should stop now," she said softly. "Before it gets worse." Daniel stared at her. He suddenly felt small. Not because she was powerful, but because she wasn't afraid. Her calmness made him feel exposed, like she already knew the consequences before he did. Then something unexpected happened. A dark blue car pulled up, and a middle-aged man stepped out. He wore a suit, carried a leather briefcase, and looked like someone who never rushed unless it mattered. He walked straight to Maya, his hand touching her shoulder gently. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Maya nodded. "I'm fine," she said. The man then turned to Daniel, his eyes cold, sharp, and professional. "Officer," he said, "I'm her lawyer." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "A lawyer? Here. Now." This wasn't a normal traffic stop anymore. This had turned into something much bigger, and he was standing in the middle of it with no idea how to escape. The lawyer raised his phone and pointed it at Daniel. "Everything you did today," he said slowly, "is documented. Witnessed. Recorded from multiple angles. You will explain why you forced an innocent woman to kneel on the road." Daniel tried to speak, but his voice cracked. She didn't obey my. She obeyed every instruction," the lawyer interrupted. "Even when the instruction was humiliating and unnecessary." The SUV man stepped in beside the lawyer, adding, "And we know exactly who she is. Which means we know who will be waiting for you at the station." Daniel felt sweat run down his back. He wasn't just facing a crowd now. He was facing something bigger, something official, something that could decide his future. Maya looked at him one last time. She didn't smile. She didn't glare. She simply said, "This is only the beginning." And in that moment, Daniel understood, everything he had assumed about her was wrong. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't alone. And she wasn't going to disappear quietly. She was about to change his life in a way he never expected. Daniel stood frozen, unable to think clearly. The lawyer's words echoed in his head, shaking the confidence he once carried. The crowd around him wasn't angry, they were disappointed, judging, recording, remembering. And Maya, the woman he had forced to kneel, stood steady like someone who already knew how the day would end. Her calmness felt heavier than shouting. It felt like truth. Daniel swallowed hard and tried to regain control. "Ma'am," he said to Maya, "you may return to your car." His voice came out softer than he expected, almost trembling. But Maya didn't move. She didn't rush. She simply watched him, as if waiting for something more, an apology, a realization, or the truth he kept avoiding. The lawyer stepped forward again, his eyes locked onto Daniel's. "Before she goes anywhere, I need to see your body cam footage," he said. Daniel's stomach twisted. He had turned it on, but only after he had already forced her to kneel. The important part wasn't there. The part that mattered most. "I'll provide it at the station," Daniel muttered. The lawyer's eyebrows tightened, sensing the fear behind his words. "Of course you will," he said coldly. "Under investigation." The SUV man came closer. "You should know," he said quietly to Daniel, "her father doesn't tolerate injustice. He will not let this slide." Daniel tried to stay firm, but his hands shook. Who is her father?" he managed to ask. Maya finally spoke, her voice calm, slow, and unshaken. "Judge William Carter," she said. The name hit Daniel like a punch. Judge Carter was a respected figure, known for being fair but unyielding. He had been in the news many times, exposing misconduct and demanding accountability. Daniel had watched those news clips reluctantly, thinking, this guy loves ruining officers' careers. Now he realized the truth: Judge Carter didn't ruin careers. Officers ruined their own careers, and he simply refused to hide it. As the name sank in, Daniel's legs felt weak. His breath grew shallow. He had not just forced any woman onto the road. He had forced the daughter of a man whose voice reached across courtrooms, cities, and entire departments. The lawyer checked Maya's arms gently. "Let's take you home," he said. "Your family is already aware." Daniel's eyes widened. Already aware," he repeated. But the man from the SUV answered for her. "Yes. I called Judge Carter the moment I recognized her. He's on his way." Those words made the world around Daniel spin slightly. Judge Carter was coming. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. A deep hum rolled down the road, and a dark gray luxury car approached at a controlled, steady pace. It pulled over quietly, but the presence it carried made everyone fall silent. The driver opened the rear door, and Judge William Carter stepped out. Tall, calm, and sharply dressed, he carried an aura that commanded respect without saying a word. His face was unreadable as he walked toward Maya. She didn't run to him. She didn't cry. But he lifted her chin carefully and said, "You're safe." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Daniel felt like his heart stopped. He watched as the judge gently examined Maya's knees, where the gravel had pressed deep marks into her skin. A look of controlled anger flashed in the judge's eyes, an anger not wild, but focused. Judge Carter straightened and turned to Daniel. The entire crowd grew quiet, waiting. "Officer," the judge began, his voice deep and steady, "explain to me why my daughter was kneeling on the road." Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. The judge continued, "Explain why she was forced into a humiliating position while people drove by. Explain why she was treated like a threat when she cooperated fully." Daniel tried again, but his voice cracked. I misread the situation." The judge stepped closer. "Did she reach for anything?" "No, sir." "Did she resist?" "No, sir." "Did she break any laws?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, sir." The judge's expression hardened. "Then tell me, Officer Daniel Hayes, why did you target her?" The sound of Daniel's own name felt sharp, cutting straight into him. He knew he was trapped in the truth. "I was wrong," Daniel finally whispered. "I was frustrated. I took it out on her." The judge studied him carefully. Not with hatred, but with disappointment so deep it felt colder than anger. The crowd recorded everything. Every word. Every breath. Judge Carter spoke one final sentence, soft but powerful, "Your career will answer for this." Daniel's knees felt weak. His world tilted. He knew then that nothing could erase what had happened, and nothing could stop what was coming. Maya looked at him one last time, not with revenge, but with a calm strength that made him feel smaller. And Daniel finally understood, the real danger wasn't her father, her lawyer, or the crowd. It was the truth he had tried to hide. And now, the truth was coming for him. Daniel stood frozen as Judge Carter's words settled into the quiet air. The crowd watched silently, waiting to see what the officer would do next. But Daniel couldn't move. He felt like the entire world had turned its gaze toward him, and every mistake he had made was now visible, sharp, unforgiving. His pride, which once felt strong, now felt useless. The uniform he wore felt heavier, as if it no longer belonged to him. Judge Carter stepped away from Daniel and guided Maya toward the luxury car. Her lawyer and the man from the SUV walked beside them. The crowd parted as they moved, treating her like someone finally receiving the respect she deserved. Maya didn't look back at Daniel. She didn't need to. Her silence already said everything. Daniel wiped the sweat from his forehead. He wanted to disappear, to rewind time, to undo the moment he told her to kneel. But reality didn't care about his regrets. Everything had already been recorded. Everything had already spread. He could almost feel the weight of the cameras pointed at him from every direction. A woman from the crowd stepped forward and whispered, "Shame on you." Her voice was soft but sharp, like a small knife that cut right through him. Another man shook his head. "You picked the wrong person, officer." Daniel's ears burned. He wanted to shout that he wasn't a bad man, that he just had a bad day. But a bad day didn't excuse humiliation. A bad day didn't erase the pain he caused. When Judge Carter helped Maya into the car, Daniel took a step forward, trying to speak. "Sir, please. I didn't know." The judge turned his head slightly. "You didn't need to know who she was," he said. "You only needed to know she was human." The words hit Daniel harder than anything else that day. He stopped walking. His throat felt tight, and for a moment, he thought he might cry. But the judge didn't wait for his answer. He closed the car door gently and signaled the driver. The car pulled away with calm dignity, leaving Daniel standing in the dust. As soon as the judge left, the crowd began to thin out. People walked back to their cars, still whispering about what they had witnessed. The man with the motorcycle gave Daniel one last glare before driving off. The teenager who had recorded the full scene saved the video and posted it online immediately. Within minutes, it would travel farther than Daniel could imagine. Daniel slowly walked back to his patrol car. His hands felt numb. His legs felt weak. He sat inside, shut the door, and let out a shaky breath. He rested his head on the steering wheel, closing his eyes as panic washed over him. He knew what was coming: an internal report, investigations, meetings, suspensions. His career was now hanging by a thin thread. But even through the panic, he felt something else: guilt. For the first time that day, he allowed himself to admit it. He hadn't just made a mistake, he had hurt someone for no reason. He had used his authority to force someone into humiliation simply because he could. The thought made his chest ache. His radio crackled. "Officer Hayes, report to the station immediately. Urgent." Daniel closed his eyes harder. The call had come sooner than he expected. He turned the key, but before driving off, he saw something lying on the passenger seat, a small piece of gravel that had stuck to Maya's knee when she stood up. He stared at it, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Her pain. Her silence. His wrongdoing. He picked it up and held it tightly. It felt sharp, tiny, insignificant. But the wound it had pressed into her knee was real. Just like the damage he had caused. Driving back to the station felt like driving toward a storm. The more he thought about what he had done, the more he realized how deep the consequences would go. Not only legally, but morally. His own conscience felt like a judge now, and he had no defense. When he reached the station, reporters were already waiting outside. Cameras flashed as soon as he stepped out of his car. Microphones were pushed toward his face. "Officer Hayes. Did you force Judge Carter's daughter to kneel on the road? Do you deny the accusation? Are you being suspended?" Daniel couldn't answer. His mouth refused to move. He walked silently past them, pushing open the station doors. Inside, his commander stood waiting, arms crossed, face hard. "My office." "Now," he said. Daniel followed him inside, feeling like he was walking toward the end of something he had worked years to build. And for the first time in his life, he truly understood what it meant to ruin your own career. But this was only the beginning. Daniel stepped inside the commander's office, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear anything else. The door closed behind him with a heavy click that sounded like a warning. His commander, Captain Ross, stood with his back turned, staring out the window. He didn't move, didn't speak. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Finally, Captain Ross turned around. His expression wasn't angry, it was disappointment, the kind that cut much deeper. "Sit," he said. Daniel sat slowly, his hands trembling as he rested them on his knees. Captain Ross placed a folder on the desk. Inside were printed screenshots from the viral video, photos taken by the woman with the camera, and a written witness statement from the man in the SUV. Daniel felt his stomach twist painfully. "Do you understand what you've done?" the captain asked quietly. Daniel opened his mouth but nothing came out. His throat felt locked. Captain Ross continued, "This department has fought for years to build trust in this community. And today, you tore it apart in minutes." Daniel looked down. Shame washed over him like cold water. The captain tapped the folder. "When I first heard the call about Judge Carter's daughter, I hoped it wasn't you." He sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. "But it was." Daniel's voice finally broke through. "Sir. I didn't mean for it to get this bad." Captain Ross stared at him. "It didn't get bad, Daniel. You made it bad." Those words struck deeper than any punishment. The captain leaned forward. "Internal Affairs is opening a full investigation. You will hand over your body cam, your badge, and your weapon." Daniel's heart dropped. Losing his badge felt like losing who he was. He removed it slowly, placing it on the desk with shaking hands. His gun followed. He felt strangely lighter and emptier at the same time. "You are suspended until further notice," Captain Ross said firmly. Daniel nodded weakly. He expected this, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the chest. Before he could speak again, someone knocked on the door. A young officer opened it and whispered, "Sir, the media is saying Judge Carter will make a statement tonight." Captain Ross closed his eyes as if the news made everything worse. He waved the young officer away. Then he looked back at Daniel. "Do you understand what that means? When Judge Carter speaks, the whole city listens." Daniel nodded slowly. He understood too well. Captain Ross softened just a little. "Daniel. I knew you when you started. You wanted to help people. You had potential." He shook his head sadly. "What happened to that man?" Daniel didn't know. Or maybe he did, but admitting it out loud hurt too much. "I just lost control," he whispered. "Control isn't something you lose," the captain said. "It's something you choose to give up." The truth stung. After a long pause, the captain added, "You owe her an apology. A real one. Not because it will save your career. It won't. But because it's the right thing to do." Daniel swallowed hard. "I don't know if she wants to hear anything from me." "Doesn't matter," Captain Ross replied. "Sometimes apologies aren't about being accepted. They're about admitting the damage you caused." Daniel stood up slowly. His legs felt unsteady. His world felt like it was falling apart piece by piece. As he left the station, reporters shouted questions again, but he walked past them silently. He didn't have any answers yet. He barely understood his own emotions. He went home, but the moment he sat on his couch, loneliness wrapped around him like a cold blanket. Hours later, the city held its breath as Judge Carter began speaking on live television. Daniel watched from his dim living room, unable to look away. Judge Carter spoke calmly, clearly, without anger, but with a seriousness that made every word feel heavy. He described what happened to Maya, explained how she had been humiliated publicly, and demanded accountability from the department. But then the judge said something Daniel didn't expect. "My daughter remained calm," he said. "She acted with dignity. She did not fight. She did not scream. She showed more strength in silence than that officer showed in uniform." Daniel felt a painful lump in his throat. Judge Carter continued, "This is not about revenge. This is about justice. And justice will be pursued." The broadcast ended. Daniel sat still, staring at the dark screen. His mistakes had been spoken aloud to the entire city. There was no hiding anymore. He realized then that his punishment wasn't just coming from the department. It was coming from the truth itself. And the truth had finally caught him. Daniel barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maya kneeling on the cold gravel. He saw her steady face. He heard her soft voice saying, "You will understand soon." Now he did. The understanding hurt more than any punishment. He woke before sunrise, feeling the weight of guilt pressing on his chest. His uniform hung in the corner of his room, but without a badge, it felt empty, like a costume pretending to be something important. He didn't know what the day would bring, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't stay silent anymore. By 9 in the morning, his phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from coworkers, union reps, reporters, and even strangers. Some defended him. Most criticized him. But the worst were the silent ones, the ones from people he respected, people whose names appeared on his screen with no words. Their silence felt louder than shouting. The department called him in for another meeting. But not with Captain Ross this time. With internal affairs. Daniel walked into the sterile, quiet hallway. 3 investigators sat at a long table. They looked professional, unbiased, cold. A camera recorded the session. One investigator, a woman with sharp eyes, began speaking. "Officer Hayes, we have reviewed the footage and witness testimonies. We need you to tell us your version of events." Daniel could feel sweat on his palms. He took a deep breath. This was it, the last chance to tell the truth. "I was frustrated," he began quietly. "I let my anger control me. She didn't do anything wrong. I forced her out of the car. I ordered her to kneel. It wasn't because of danger. It wasn't because she resisted. It was because I wanted power. I abused my authority." The room went silent. The investigators exchanged glances. His honesty surprised them. Most officers denied everything, even when caught. But Daniel didn't have the strength to lie anymore. The lead investigator leaned forward. "Do you understand the seriousness of your actions?" Daniel nodded. "Yes. I humiliated her. I harmed her. I made her feel small when she was innocent. I ruined everything myself." The investigator wrote something down. "We will notify you once the investigation concludes. You are still suspended. You may leave." Daniel stood, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Telling the truth didn't erase anything, but it felt like a step toward becoming someone he should have been all along. As he walked out of the building, he noticed someone waiting by the sidewalk. Maya. She stood calmly, her hands folded in front of her. She wore simple clothes, no anger on her face. Just quiet strength. Daniel froze. He didn't know whether to approach or walk away. But she spoke first. "You told the truth," she said softly. Daniel swallowed hard. "I had to." "You didn't have to," she replied. "Most people don't." Her words made him look down in shame. He stepped closer, carefully. "Maya. I'm sorry. I'm deeply, honestly sorry. Not because I got caught. Not because of what's happening to me. I'm sorry because I hurt you. I made you kneel when you deserved respect." Maya studied him quietly. Her eyes didn't show hatred. They showed exhaustion, and something else, understanding, maybe. "You hurt me," she said calmly. "But you also hurt yourself. That's why I warned you." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know." She looked past him toward the station. "My father will continue the legal process. The investigation will continue. None of that changes." "I understand," Daniel whispered. "But," Maya added, "I believe in accountability, not revenge." Daniel blinked in surprise. She continued, "I don't hate you, Officer Hayes. I hate what you did. There's a difference. Those words struck deeply. He had expected anger. He had expected shouting. But her calmness made the guilt heavier, more real. Maya sighed softly. My father wants justice. I want justice too. But I also want people to learn. To change. She looked at him carefully. Will you change, Daniel? Or will you just feel sorry for yourself? Daniel felt something shift inside him. I want to change. I will change. I don't want to be the man I was yesterday. Maya nodded slowly, as if she could see the truth in his eyes. Good, she said. Because your story doesn't end today. But how it ends is up to you. She took a step back, preparing to leave. Before she walked away, she added one last sentence, simple but powerful. You made me kneel. But today, you stand because I didn't break. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Daniel standing on the sidewalk, realizing the full meaning behind her strength. He understood now. And the understanding was only the beginning of what was coming next. Daniel watched Maya walk away, each step graceful and steady, as if she wasn't just leaving the sidewalk, she was leaving the weight of the entire incident behind her. But Daniel knew he could not walk away so easily. His consequences were still waiting. His mistakes were still alive, changing everything around him. The next week felt like a storm he couldn't escape. News channels replayed the video again and again. Social media exploded with opinions, some angry, some shocked, some disappointed. His name circulated online, attached to headlines he never wanted to see. Every morning, he woke with a heavy feeling in his chest, knowing the world had already seen the worst version of him. Internal Affairs called him again, this time to review the final decision. Daniel walked into the building with slow steps, each one heavier than the last. Captain Ross stood outside the meeting room, arms crossed, face stern. You ready? The captain asked. No, Daniel admitted honestly. But I'm here. The captain gave a small nod. Whatever happens, take responsibility. Don't run from it. Daniel swallowed and entered the room. 3 investigators sat at the table again. Papers were stacked neatly in front of them. A file with his name sat on top, thin, but powerful enough to shape the rest of his life. Officer Hayes, the lead investigator said, we have reached a decision. Daniel's heart pounded. Considering the evidence, your confession, and the severity of your actions, the department has chosen to terminate your position as a police officer effective immediately. The words hit him like a blow to the chest. He felt dizzy, but he didn't collapse. He simply nodded. I understand. You will lose your badge, the investigator continued, but there will be no criminal charges filed at this time. Judge Carter has agreed not to pursue further charges, under the condition that you complete mandatory training and community service. Daniel's eyes widened slightly in surprise. No, charges? The investigator nodded. Yes. Judge Carter believes that accountability must teach, not destroy. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Maya's words echoed in his mind, I don't hate you. I hate what you did. He bowed his head. Thank you, he whispered, though the thanks wasn't for the investigators. It was for the woman he had wronged. The meeting ended. Daniel stepped out of the room, feeling strangely lighter. Not because he was free, but because he finally understood something important, he could still rebuild his life, piece by piece, if he tried. Captain Ross approached him. It's official. Daniel nodded. I'm done. The captain sighed. You made a serious mistake, Daniel. But you also told the truth. That's rare. He patted Daniel on the shoulder. Don't waste this second chance. Daniel managed a weak smile. I won't. Later that afternoon, Daniel walked through the neighborhood where he once patrolled. People recognized him, some whispered, some looked away, some stared with judgment. He accepted all of it. He deserved it. But then he saw something unexpected. A small group of kids were playing basketball on the street. The ball rolled toward him. He picked it up, handing it back. One of the boys looked at him curiously. "You're the guy from the video, right?" the boy asked. Daniel sighed. "Yeah. That's me." The boy studied him for a moment. "You messed up." "I know," Daniel said softly. "But," the boy added, "my mom said you told the truth. She said that means you're trying to fix it." Daniel paused, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. "I'm trying," he said quietly. The boy nodded and ran back to his friends. Daniel continued down the sidewalk. The air felt different, heavy, but full of possibility, like the world wasn't closing on him but giving him room to grow. Later that evening, while sitting on a park bench, he saw a familiar figure approaching. Maya. She sat a few feet away, not close, not far, just enough to show she wasn't afraid. "How did the meeting go?" she asked. Daniel exhaled. "I'm no longer an officer." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." "Yes," he agreed. "Fair." Maya looked out at the park, watching children run and laugh. "I didn't want your life destroyed," she said. "I wanted the truth to matter." "It did," Daniel replied. "It changed me." Maya finally turned to him. Her eyes were calm, not forgiving, not cruel, just human. "Good," she said. "Because in the end, this story is not about me kneeling." Daniel listened closely. "It's about you learning to stand," she finished. And in that quiet moment, Daniel realized she was right. This story was painful, public, and unforgettable, but it had also given him something he never expected. A chance to become the man he should have been all along.